And welcome everyone back to Beyond the Forecast. I am Chief Meteorologist Michael Stevens, and today, well, it's the last day of June. So we are going to kind of focus on some things or remind you of some things to remember once we get into the warmest part of the year. It is now going to be July, where we have our warmest average temperatures of the year. We have more of those pop-up showers and storms, and sometimes they can be pretty severe pretty quickly. So I am going to take you first into where your safe shelter is. When a severe storm or severe weather pops up, do you know where that is? Do you know what it is? We go through and explain where the best options are for you to take cover if severe weather happens. Not only in your home, but also out places if you're out and about. So we'll have that, and then meteorologist John Gross will have the stages of a thunderstorm for you, so you can look and recognize where the storms are popping and what stage they're going into, so you're more prepared if you're out and about in the middle of the day and you start seeing those storms popping up. And then meteorologist Haley Fischetti will go over the UV index. Very, very important, especially on days like today or weeks like this week. It's a holiday week. You have the National Cherry Festival going on. You have the July 4th holiday. If you're going to be out in this sun, you need to know where the UV index is and what that means. So we'll have all of that coming up in today's jam-packed Beyond the Forecast. But first up, let's talk about this day in weather history. This is wild. June 30th, 1972, the entire state of Pennsylvania was declared a disaster area as a result of the catastrophic flooding caused by Hurricane Agnes, which claimed 48 lives and caused $2.1 billion in damage. Now let's fix that for inflation, shall we? Just kind of show you what that means in 1972. It would have been $16 billion today. That is wild. So this day, back in 1972, Hurricane Agnes made Pennsylvania declare a disaster area, the entire state. That's pretty wild. All right, trivia time, Friday. We wanted to know, what is it called when water vapor condenses close to the ground? Is it fog, haze, rain, or droplets? Yeah, it's fog. All right, today we want to know, what is the calm part of the hurricane with low winds and clear skies called? Is it the center, the eye, the end, or calm and clear? QR code right there. Hit it with your phone. That'll take you where you can go to answer, and we'll have the answer for you coming up on tomorrow's episode of Beyond the Forecast. All right, weather word of the day. This is a new segment we started implementing last week. Today's weather word is super typhoon. It's actually technically two words, but super typhoon is the words that we are giving you for today. And okay, essentially this is major hurricane. So if you haven't heard this before, typhoon, hurricane, cyclone, they're all the same thing. So in the Atlantic basin, the Atlantic Ocean, they're called hurricanes. In the Pacific basin, they're called typhoons. In the Indian Ocean basin, they're called cyclones. So they're all the same thing, they just have different names for each basin. So hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones, all the exact same thing, just a very large, strong, low pressure system, but they have different ways of categorizing them. A super typhoon is equivalent to a major hurricane here in the United States, in the Atlantic basin. So category 4, category 5, that is a super typhoon over in the Pacific. So there you go. That is a weather word for today, super typhoon. Maybe we can get some glitter in the word going bling for you. All right, viewer photo of the day, always brought to you by Great Rooms. Today's picture comes to us from Denise Landry. All I can think of when I see that, and nothing against you, Denise, is D-nice. If you get it, you get it. You don't, you don't. She titled it Northern Michigan Beauty. This is a beautiful butterfly, and if I'm not mistaken, this comes from my father, who was just infatuated with butterflies. I believe this is a tiger swallowtail. Could be wrong. Let me know if I'm right on that. I think I am. But an absolutely gorgeous butterfly. Thank you so much, Denise, for sending in that photo. And as always, thank you to Great Rooms for sponsoring this segment. All right, let's send you over to me. Talk about severe weather shelters, where you need to go, what is the most ideal spot when severe weather pops up. We'll have all of those details for you coming up right after the break. And welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Forecast. Now, throughout the week, we've been telling you a lot of severe weather criteria, the awareness that you need to pay attention to whether it comes to severe thunderstorm watches or severe thunderstorm warnings. Same for tornado watches and tornado warnings. And also, we've been talking to many about the things you need in case of severe weather, whether it's thunderstorms or tornadoes, especially taking shelter. Now, we've heard from meteorologist Haley Fischetti about the things that you need to have in your safe place in case of things like this. And we're going to roll you through kind of some plans to think about in case you don't have one in place. And this will help keep you safe in those moments of severe thunderstorms or possibly even a tornado. So, what do you do when a tornado warning is issued? And this is our good friend Doug here. I've named him Doug. Doug is just sitting at home and gets his tornado warning. It's issued for his location. He needs to start reacting and doing what his plan is. And if he doesn't have one, he needs to start thinking about, hey, what do I do now? And so, when you start thinking about things to do, the safe place option, where should I go? Well, one is a bunker of some sort. Now, in northern Michigan, we are blessed that we do have a lot of basements across northern Michigan. Now, if you're closer to a lake, you might not always have that option, or a river, or somewhere where it's lower and the water table is lower. So you might not have that option. But good news is a lot of local cities have storm shelters in place. Now, there are websites out there that you can go to see where there are storm shelters in your area. So that is always an option too. If you know severe weather is going to be a possibility that day, or you see storms forming and they're severe down towards Lake Michigan, you're inland a little bit, you're like, hey, I should probably head to said shelter, which is a block or two away from you. That is always a good plan to have as well. Now, let's say you have a basement or you have a place in your home that you can seek shelter from. Some of the items that you should have, as Haley mentioned earlier, is an air horn, a cell phone, and water. Those are three big things that you should have. And also things like helmets, boots, because if it is a tornado and it comes into your neck of the woods, close to your house, whether it's a direct impact or not, it could do a lot of damage. So have a helmet and protective footwear such as boots when you go to your safe place. And then if damage does happen to your house, let's say the wall kind of falls in and the wall you're against blocks you, but you're underneath that wall. The air horn will let people know, hey, I'm down here, I need help. Or a cell phone, if you do have cell service still, which is sometimes hit or miss when tornadoes fly through. You can call someone, you can text someone, you can have a way of keeping yourself informed, but also relaying information to people you need to get a hold of. And then water is by far a very important thing to have, as well as canned foods, because if you do happen to get stuck and help can't get to you right away, especially hours at a time, you need to stay hydrated. And if you do have to eat, that is also one thing to keep in mind. So that is one way of keeping yourself safe in your shelter. So let's take a look at some ways or a good place for a shelter here in northern Michigan especially. Basements are the go-to place to take shelter. Stay away from windows. If your basements have windows, make sure you're away from windows, because if that glass breaks and it starts flying with the wind, you definitely don't want to be impacted by that. Look for interior rooms that don't have windows on your floor plan. So when we take a look at this house, you can see you got this room, 2 windows. That's probably not the best room right there. Right here you have a bathroom that's interior, no windows. That would be a great spot if you didn't have this basement. Here you have a door and also windows on that door. Probably not the best place because that door could actually fly off too. And then right here, you can see there's a wall and a little bit of a window there. If you can get behind this wall and keep yourself away from that glass, that's another safer option. But this is the safest option you have right here, whether it's a crawl space or a basement. For me, I have a northern Michigan basement that's half crawl space and half basement, but there's enough room for me to get down there with my pups and my wife and take shelter. If you have this, that's where you need to go. That's where you need to plan your safe place. So when you take a look at the overview of a plan, this is the first floor. So you want to make sure you're on the lowest portion of your house. That is always where you want to be, the lowest portion. If you can be in the basement, best. If you don't have a basement, take a look at your floor plan, like right here, and you can see that there's windows there, but the interior bathroom is enclosed and does not have windows. that would be a great spot to grab your protective gear, grab your cell phone, has water there as well. You can just chill in there if that is your last resort. If you have a basement, that's where you want to go, number one. But number two, if you have a first floor and there's nowhere else for you to go, you want to be in an interior room, no windows. So there you go. Interior room, lowest level, is always the safest option of any home. And especially in a smaller room like this, it is going to have harder time dropping things on you. When you have an open space like this for these bedrooms, walls could collapse. You have more chances for a roof to fall in. And kitchen, definitely don't want to be there. But interior rooms, no glass if you don't have a basement. That is the best spot to be. So Doug is taking a look at his safe options, right? Says if I have a basement, that's where I need to be. If I don't have a basement, I need to be in an interior room, no windows, a place away from where the storm can get to me. So if your home is equipped with a basement, that is your best safe place. If your home doesn't have a basement, if your home doesn't have the best interior room without windows, again, seek out your city and see if they have a storm shelter. That is an option that you can go to if we do happen to have the possibility for those severe storms or possibly even tornadoes for that given day. So there's your options for seeking shelter and what you should do in the time of seeking shelter. Make sure you have that protective gear. Make sure you have ways of keeping in touch with loved ones or asking for help if you need it, and make sure you have an item, whether it's an air horn or something to make noise, so people know, hey, this house is taking a little damage. Is there anybody in here? If they can't get to you, have that air horn so they can hear you if they're knocking on the door. So there you go, a little bit of taking shelter with Severe Weather Awareness Week. We'll have more coming up on Beyond the Forecast.
Hey there, everybody. Meteorologist John Gross, and today we are going to be talking about the stages of a thunderstorm, how they develop, and how do they dissipate. And when you're talking about, well, a thunderstorm at its peak, but in order to get a thunderstorm or just any storm that could produce rain, even lightning, when you're talking about hail potentially within a very strong updraft, well, you need to talk about the basics, and that all starts with the classic water cycle. So remember, that involves evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and then runoff to wherever that water might be collecting, whether that's in a lake, an ocean, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and start with that as we're going into at least what we call the morning hours. Sun comes up, sun starts to heat the earth, which then causes warmer conditions right near the surface. That's why as you go up in heights throughout the atmosphere, temperatures get colder, at least in the troposphere. But when you're talking about that, eventually any water that is pretty much ready to be evaporated from that heating, that starts to get lifted into the atmosphere. So those warm air parcels, they start to rise. And as they start to get higher up, they start to cool. Remember, because the temperatures, they get colder as you're going up in the atmosphere. So eventually that moisture, it's squeezed out. You're at what's called the condensation level, otherwise known as just, well, the air is saturated, and now we're starting to go into the condensation phase. So now we're changing over any vapors, water vapor, to back to a liquid, and that's when you're starting to see those clouds at least starting to develop. So here's a look at the stages. So now we have the clouds starting to develop. Now there are 3 stages when you're talking about the thunderstorm. You have the cumulus stage. So this is the initial start. Again, you're seeing that warmer air rising, and you're starting to see that cloud starting to develop. So that's stage number 1. Once you really start to get a lot of instability in the atmosphere, otherwise known as just the air unstable, pretty much meaning that it's warmer than its surroundings, so it just continues to move up throughout the atmosphere. That's how you can start to get what's called a cumulonimbus cloud, and that's when you can start to build very strong updrafts and or downdrafts. Eventually, once that storm starts to become a little bit weaker, at least the conditions within the atmosphere not as favorable for the thunderstorm to continue to at least grow or maintain its strength. Usually at this point, the downdraft starts to take over, and then you have what's called the dissipating stage, and that's when you can start to see an end to these thunderstorms. Case in point, it's not going to rain all the time. There's going to be sunshine in between any storms that we do see develop. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. You're talking about that cumulus So here it is, that warmer air, like we mentioned earlier, remember the water cycle, you're starting to see that warmer air rising, so that upward motion starts to help to develop some of those cumulus clouds. Now, cumulus clouds, usually what we call cotton ball clouds, those can be associated with a fair weather day. You can talk about sun and clouds, you can talk about a nice sunny, even a warmer day during the summertime where you just have cumulus clouds. But again, you do have to start with that cumulus cloud. So now we have that developed. As we continue on into the next stage, and this is the mature stage, so this is when the conditions within the atmosphere are primed, ready to go for thunderstorm development. So you're talking about a lot of lift in the atmosphere. You need to get that water vapor higher up in the atmosphere. You need a lot of instability, pretty much meaning that the air is unstable, so you start to develop very strong updrafts and very strong downdrafts. And once you start to get that updraft, if you remember when we were talking about hail development, that's when you really can start to get what's called a hail core within a cumulonimbus cloud, and that can be a very strong indication of a very strong thunderstorm. So that's the mature stage. So now you have a non-severe or even a severe thunderstorm in play. That's at its peak, but eventually what we call a downdraft, that can start to take over. That colder air starts to win out over the warmer air. Thunderstorms, well, they don't really like cold air, otherwise known as a cold pool. And once we start to see that developing, the storm eventually will start to dissipate or at least precipitate out whatever rain or even hail is left within it. And then usually that's when the thunderstorm is pretty much done and over with. So remember, you start with the cloud, cumulonimbus cloud, eventually going into the mature stage, and then you have the dissipating stage where you pretty much see the thunderstorm rain itself out. So those are the main three. Now remember, you can have a non-severe thunderstorm or you can have a severe thunderstorm. And especially when you're talking about the severe thunderstorm, that's when you can start to get a severe thunderstorm watch or a severe thunderstorm warning. And in specific cases, if it is a strong enough thunderstorm that is capable of producing very strong winds, large hail, you can also have tornadoes associated with severe thunderstorms. That's when you can start to get back into the watch versus the warning. So when you're talking about that severe thunderstorm watch, remember, conditions are favorable. We have the ingredients ready to go, but we haven't produced it yet. When you're talking about that severe thunderstorm warning, taco warning, we have the severe thunderstorm, we have tacos. I'm meteorologist John Gross reporting for Beyond the Forecast.
Thanks, John. Coming up next, we're going to send it over to meteorologist Haley Fischetti before we say goodbye, and she's going to tell us about the UV index. We'll have that coming up right after the break.
Welcome back to Beyond the Forecast. Let's actually break down the scale. So here's a look at that UV index. This is from the EPA online, looking at low conditions, less than 2 on the UV range. This is when you need little to no protection from the sun, sunglasses, a hat. If you're in the snow, you can actually see a little bit of a sunburn sometimes, as it can get doubled to your UV range. So staying protected even on cloudy days is always going to be great, but that's where you can see little to no protection. Moderate is around 3 to 5. Sometimes that's in the morning hours in the summertime, starting to wear a little bit more of that SPF, the sun protection, when you continue to go outside. High is around 6 to 7. That's when you normally see it in the afternoon, even for very high, around 8 to 10. This is where we normally sit on really sunny days, no clouds in the sky, in the middle of the day, in the afternoon, where we have the most sun. This is when you need to stay protected from the sun, wearing higher SPFs depending on how your skin can take the sun, wearing sunglasses, hats, staying in the shade, maybe even avoiding going outside if you can't handle the sun. And that's the case for extreme as well. If you're around 11 plus, that's when it's very, very bright out there. You can almost burn your skin in a matter of an hour, even minutes, if you're not protected. That's why all of these ranges, you have to stay somewhat protective. It just depends on what range we normally sit in, which for here in northern Michigan, it is around 6 to 7 to around 8 to 10, that high to very high range. But here's some things you can do when it comes to the UV index. Of course, we talked about it, stay protected, hat, sunglasses, sunscreen. make sure you're reapplying throughout the day. Even when it's maybe sweaty or you're going into water, you need to continue to prep for the sun. Not staying protected from the sun can lead to some harm to your body. But we'll have more information and more details over on Beyond the Forecast.
For meteorologist John Gross, meteorologist Haley Fischetti, for everyone out there and myself, have a wonderful and safe holiday week. We'll see you right back here tomorrow, 4:30, for more Beyond the Forecast. Bye, everybody.